you don't need much of an introduction, but I'm really pleased to welcome Mark to VRT today. Microsoft MVP, certified trainer, and Dynamics 365 and Power Platform strategist. Also known as the NZ365 guy and the host of Microsoft Business Applications podcast and the founder of the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge. And I believe the proud owner of a robotic lawnmower.
Very important.
Yes, he told me that. So I know there's a lot of people on the call that participated in the 90-Day Challenge before, and the reason I've invited Mark in is because I've had such amazing feedback from that. But there'll be people on the call as well that want to know a little bit more about signing up. So this is very much a roundtable session. Any questions you've got, just get involved. Let's just chat. And yeah, jump in when you want. If you do want to put something, the chat doesn't work on this, it's Q&A. So if you can't ask out loud, then pop something in there. So welcome, Mark. Might be good for I've given you a little bit of an intro there, but if you want to kind of give us a little bit of an overview of you and the 90-Day Challenge as well, I'd love to hear it from you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm just looking at all the faces here and I recognize most people here, and so they could probably talk about the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge better than me from a consuming side of the program. But yeah, I'm located in New Zealand, so with Nathan here, who's obviously up at Sparrow. My alarm just went off to get me up in time for this call. It's 5 a.m. in the morning here. And I returned from London in the end of 2019 from living in London. So I used to live in West Hampstead. Well, London was really just a launch base for my wife and I, because we would Thursday night most weekends, and we did this for I think 6 months straight. When we knew that we were leaving, we would depart London at out on Thursday nights, and we'd go to another European location, spend the weekend, come back Sunday nights, and that was our London experience for a long time. So it meant we got to see, I think, about 40 countries across Europe, and the taking it all in, meeting lots of people. And it was in London that the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge started. It was in I think the end of 2018, that I was sitting in my flat in London. I wasn't working. My wife worked at Google in London, and that's why we had moved to the UK. She had got a transfer from her. She had been working at Google in Australia, and we were, so we're in London. I was freelancing, meaning when I say freelancing, I work for Microsoft in Redmond. So they're my main customer that I was working for. And I've kind of worked for them ever since, on top of my day jobs. And I was sitting in London in my flat and thinking about, in 2018, I really wanted to ramp up what I was doing, and I suppose to a degree test myself and not give myself any excuses for why I wasn't doing things. And what I mean by that. So I didn't used to really blog much or create content much, and the reason, well, particularly blogging, and the reason for it was, I didn't learn to read till I was 13 years old. I'm dyslexic. I, can't spell to save myself. So all reasons. And, in school, I hated writing essays. I hated doing anything that was written because I just wasn't good at it. It just wasn't my skill. Get me to go out and mow a lawn or do something practical or fix a machine. No problem. I was your man for that type of thing. So, but I've got this big thing that I struggle making excuses to myself. And so I challenge myself to write 1,000-word post twice a week and publish them twice a week and do it for a year. And it was out of that, is that when you set yourself a target like that, is that it creates a degree of focus for you. And so, I researched a lot. I would speak on controversial topics, as in controversial from, being in the Microsoft ecosystem. It's very easy to drink the Kool-Aid and become very Microsoft, aren't they just amazing? And let's use all their products, and they are the only company in the world. And I really started to balance my thinking and be a lot, more critical of the way I engage with the technology. So, for example, my MVP for the last 13 years and my entire 20-year career in this space was built around MSCRM 1.2, which is, where I started. And I wrote a piece then, I remember that year that got a bit of pushback from Microsoft, which was, why hasn't Dynamics 365 sales changed in 20 years? And I just said it was built on 20-year-old thinking and fundamentally hadn't changed. And wasn't that a travesty for an organization like Microsoft to kind of sweat an asset without really going, how is modern sales done? Now, of course, a lot's been done since then. A lot more tech has been introduced to that specific product. But I would write critical posts like that. Or I spoke in Amsterdam at a conference there, and my opening title was Dynamics 365 is Dead. And it upset a lot of people. Within 2 hours, I had a call from Microsoft to explain why I was saying this. And because, naturally people quoted the first line of what I said, Dynamics 365 is dead, and not the second line, which was long live the Power Platform. And I was telling a story about how people needed to change their thinking when you were going to build a large solution at scale, that you didn't need to use a Dynamics 365 SKU. You could start directly on the Power Platform and build in a headless way. And the reason I was saying that came off a hackathon that we did in London. Chris Huntingford, remember the Dynamics guys? I don't know if you remember that community that used to run back then in the day. I was involved in a hackathon there, and I was surprised at the number of consultants on my team that debated that Saturday morning in London, about which Dynamics products they should start with, when the solution we were designing had no need for any Dynamics products. It could easily be done as a model-driven app directly on the Power Platform. And I realized there was this kind of misunderstanding in market, even that Dynamics 365 was a app on the Power Platform in its own right. But anyhow, long story short, out of that year of doing that, I did a couple other things. I did a live, I had got into YouTubing. I did a 33 video series on how to become an MVP that year. I was doing podcasts. I think I ramped up to twice a week doing podcasts. I was writing those 2 posts, and I was dropping content 7 days a week on schedule. And people are like, how are you doing that? Well, I became very scheduled in what I was doing. I was always generally about 4 weeks ahead content-wise. So I would write in batches, or I would record my podcast in batches. I would even record the videos in batches for YouTube. And then, of course, just schedule them out on a time frame. And that way, because I was traveling and things like that, I would never miss a beat. I would never let things get in the way. And out of that, there was a guy, I can't remember his name. I think he has like Dynamics Labs in the UK. Who runs Dynamics Labs? And Vlad has got, his business is very similar. I think one's called Dynamics Labs and one's Dynamica Labs or something like that. Does anyone know what the company is in the UK? He came out of KPMG, I think, originally, and he's got a piece of software specifically built on Dynamics, I think, for the real estate industry. Anyone know who I'm talking about?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
He's an MVP. He's Egyptian. He's Egyptian by birth. A lot of his staff are in Egypt.
Mohammed Mustafa?
Yeah, Mustafa. That's how I remember his last name. Yeah, Mustafa. Yeah, so I met with him a couple of times in London, and Mohammed was mentoring people. And when I talked to him about mentoring, I was like, I think I'm going to start mentoring people. But you got to think, this is pre-COVID, and we weren't doing Teams meetings like this or anything all the time. I don't know if Teams was even out then. I think we might have been still on Skype for Business or something. But I decided that I was going to put a mentoring program in place. And so I just started with mind mapping about what would what would people need to cover in a mentoring program? I drew up this big elaborate mind map of what I thought should be covered. But one of the things from day one, I wanted it to be available to anybody in the world. And that's, you know, when you come from New Zealand, you realize there's a lot of content in the Northern Hemisphere and not a lot of content, conferences, anything in the Southern Hemisphere. And so I always came from the mindset is, what about the people in the countries that don't already have an MVP or don't already have a community initiatives running? How do I help them? Excuse me. And so that became my focus, to create the 90-day mentoring challenge that was accessible to anybody anywhere in the world. And so in the very first year that I ran it, I think about 40 people signed up, and I just put a Microsoft form up on my site. And I did it within 24 hours of having the idea to putting the form up, like just take action, do it quickly. And yeah, it blew me away. The I think 40 odd people, as I say, came on the first time, and they were just so engaged, and the content resonated, you know, with them. And it grew from there. I just did it every year thereafter, except for I think 2020. What did I do it last year? 2023, I think, was the only year I missed. So I did it for 5 odd years, and I had stopped doing it when I was working at IBM, which, by the way, IBM, I finished in 4 days. I'm looking forward to it. End of the month, I'm out. And so while at IBM, I actually, although I didn't do it publicly, I did it internally. So when our grads joined the business, I would put them through the equivalent of the 90-day mentoring challenge, but an internal way. And then I had just so many people saying, could I run it? Could I do it again? And so that, you know, made me go, okay, it's something people still want to do. And so, you know, this year we launched with, I think, 114 people total joined in the first cohort. And I used to only run it once a year. I'm now on the second time running it this year, and I'll probably run it twice more this year. And then, yeah, it's grown from there. I've got now a Microsoft partner that wanting to put up, have a dedicated cohort just to their staff across 2 quarters. They're a large GSI, so 350,000 people inside their business, and not all of them, of course, in biz apps, but this will be something for their biz apps folks. So I think it's growing in momentum. One of the big reasons it's attractive to the big partners is that it's Microsoft will actually fund it entirely for 100 of their staff at a time. They have a thing called co-op funds that if you're a Microsoft partner and you're selling BizApps licenses, Microsoft put a little cut of all that aside and give it back to a partner to spend on growing their business. And of that funding pool that gets put aside, I think 40% of it can be spent on developing staff, as long as it's specifically around Microsoft. For example, you couldn't use that funding to do pro-sci training and, you know, for around change management, because Microsoft don't consider that only a Microsoft technology. But because of what I do is squarely just around biz apps, Microsoft will cover that funding for those partners that are kind of selling licenses at a scale. So really any partner that's in a circle would have these type of funds aside that could afford them to and at the end of the day, a lot of partners, you got to use it in the financial year, and a lot of partners don't use all their money that Microsoft allocate, and Microsoft are happy, of course. They don't, you know, the partner, they have to pay the partner if the partner spends the money, and a lot of partners just never get around to spending this money, so it just drops off the radar every year. So it's becoming a new opportunity to explore for the 90-day mentoring challenge. Anyhow, I've talked for ages. Any questions?
I'm interested, does that tie in with you finishing at IBM? Is this more of a
I had to get out of IBM because like when I told my boss that I'd already trained 114 people this year for competitors all over the world, he wasn't really that happy of the idea. And when I said that I was just about to, you know, at scale, another GSI, he was even less happy. But I'd already resigned by the point I was telling him that. So, and I knew I needed to get out with, you know, being involved with more GSIs that weren't IBM.
It's funny. And then, so, if you're working with these partners now on this basis, they've got the funding, would you tailor that to that partner, or is this everybody in?
No, so one of the things that I have noticed with the 90-day mentoring challenge, and so partners want me to take content out of the challenge. They don't like it because I'm in the challenge. For me, one of the tenets of the challenge is that I noticed mentoring done inside an organization is never in the interest of the individual. It's always in the interest of the organization. And a byproduct might be it helps the individual, but it was never about, if I'm mentoring you and let's say we took IBM as an example, and you're an IBM employee, and I was your manager, I have an agenda, right? It's in the interest of the business. If I go, let's say I know I've got field service projects coming up, and I mentor you down, like, you should do field service because there's a massive opportunity and it's going to be awesome for your career, when all I'm doing is guiding you down a pathway where I know we've got a big deal coming in, we're going to need resources to staff it, right? And so the whole idea of the 90-day mentoring challenge is squarely to look at it from the individual and say, how can we advance your career so much that you get to choose, that you get to negotiate against your employer around things like salary, that you get confident in that. And, I say one of the best way to get a pay rise in our industry that I have observed over my 20-year career in BizApps is to resign. Right? Go to another employer and you will get a massive pay rise. If you stay at your current employer, and particularly if you're in a large organization, I forget if the person's on this call that was is not from Amsterdam. He was on the 90-day mentoring challenge last quarter, and he was saying his company, in the time he had been there, when he started in the company, he was a superstar in the business, right? He was the go-to person around BizApps. And then they acquired a few businesses, and now they had a couple of thousand staff. And all of a sudden, when you go, I'd like to go to this conference, to help my career development, the company's like, well, if we do it for you, we've got to do it for everybody. So, we can't do this anymore. And so I've noticed with the very large companies, even myself and IBM, right? Outside of IBM, I'm well known. Inside of IBM, I'm just employee number, 78693 type thing, right? You're just a number in a crowd. Do I just quote what was his name from what was that movie, the famous one? It was written by a guy in Paris, I forget his name, but Anne Hathaway played the main lead character in it. I'm so bad with memory.
I am rubbish at stuff like this.
It's an old musical, it's a musical type movie. Come on, someone must know it.
I was going to say Clockwork Orange, but when you said Anne Hathaway, I was like, nope, not that one.
No, she had to get her head shaved off. It was kind of sent in France back in the
Les Miserables.
Yeah, Les Miserables. Wasn't his prison number, 87693. I think that's why it came to me. But anyhow, I'm just saying, you just a number of these big corporations, and so as I say, people want me to take stuff out where I really promote the individual over the company. Like, I'm a big believer that companies these days are no longer loyal, but they demand loyalty from staff, but they're not really loyal themselves. And I suppose one of the biggest things that made me think for Microsoft let go, in the last couple of years that were superstars, they have an award system in Microsoft called and the highest award you can achieve is called the Red Jacket Award, where you walk the stage, you have been the best of your peers. And I saw people that had got a red jacket the year before that were just let go because accounting said, we need to get rid of this headcount to, for the share market to be happy. And then I saw Google do it. And Google, with my wife working there for about 10 years, Google had an incredible culture in their business where if you're a Googler, you were a fan of the organization. They were amazing, right? They did so much for you. I mean, I've hung out in the Google offices in London, DeepMind offices in London and stuff because of going in there and having the free lunches and everything that they would do. But the entire culture changed when all of a sudden people that thought that they were there at Google for life, and Google started going through and axing people, you know, like that happened in the last 24 months. And it happened to so many big corporates, is that I think people have started to realize that the company is not that loyal to you. And so if you want to develop your career, you really need to look out for yourself and your career progression. Now, you know, I started my own company. I founded Magnetism in New Zealand. That was my first business that I started from scratch myself. And I know what it's like to have a small business and be responsible for everybody, you know, everybody's, you know, food on their table for their families when it comes to payroll and things like that. And I've worked for these large companies, and I find that a smaller company is generally more loyal to you than a large organization. At a large organization, it is about economics. The number one thing driving any large organization is the shareholders, not the kumbaya, not the, you know, the drinks on Friday night, not the loyalty's just not there. And your manager, so here's the crazy thing, right? This is not public. I know it is, but I doubt it will get back. So when I resigned from IBM, I'm like, why isn't my manager contacting me? Days have gone past, no contact. And I'm like, hey, he must be pissed off, you know, me resigning. And anyhow, I get a call from his manager. And I'm like, yeah, why isn't he, you know, no response to my resignation? You know, I just gone into Workday, into the HR system and resigned, and sent an email with a formal resignation letter. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, the thing is, your manager, he got let go last week. I'm like, oh. And yeah, while I'm here telling you this is my skip line manager. Yeah, this is my last day as well. What? And, you know, Q1 had ended. They just went through and were like, you know what? We've got 150 staff too many in Australia. And they were only the very senior management layers. And they're just like, in 1 week, just shed so many staff. And they just, you know, get notified, say, here it is. Here's your reason to leave without talking about it. And boom, all gone. Now, I was at a level that wasn't affected by any of that, but boy, I'm so glad I've resigned and taken control really of where I go forward. I can't imagine, even though we've got people knocking at the door, I can't imagine taking a full-time role at a GSI again. I just can't see that it's me. I'm too restrictive.
It's really interesting hearing you talk about that, actually, because, you know, my job is a recruiter and we have these conversations and daily. People are really loyal, maybe not to an IBM, but to their manager.
Yeah.
Really overthink it, really feel kind of emotionally attached. And it's kind of quite brutal to say, but if Binance says cut 10%, they'll cut 10%, and it doesn't matter who, you know, that number has to be reached. And so when you flip that around and you're thinking about your own career progression, and it ties in with what you're saying about the training focus for these individuals as well, it is all focused towards the business. And it can be quite a sensitive conversation to have with somebody who's really carefully thinking, talking to their partner, considering everything and who it affects within that job, and kind of once you're out the door.
Yeah.
You know,
the thing is, your manager can show loyalty to you, but at the end of the day, it's can be like what's above them. When I was in Australia, living in Australia, I went there and in 4 years built the largest dynamics practice of any partner. We were twice the size based on head count of our closest competitor, and we only did back then CRM, Dynamics 365 CRM. We didn't do, like now I do finance and operations. I do the entire, you know, even Business Central. We do the entire portfolio now as well as the Power Platform, you know. Back then we didn't, and we were twice the size on headcount of our closest competitor, and I did that in 4 years of building that. And that employer, that company that I was working for, was a publicly listed company, 33 years old on the Australian stock market, and a Japanese company was going to was sniffing around to acquire it. And what I noticed, my CEO of that company came to me. So we'd been massively successful. When I started, we were doing, I think, 800,000 a year on Dynamics projects. And when I resigned, we were doing 25 million. And that was in about 3.5 to 4 years in project work. And well, he came to me and said, oh, listen, I got to go to the stock market in 4 weeks' time, and we've lost a lot of money inside the part of the business. Can you let 25% of your staff go in the next fortnight? And I'm like, no way. And he was like, no, you can hire them again in 6 weeks' time after we've gone out to the stock market. You just got to fire them all now. And I was just like, for every person that's on your team, that probably affects, let's say, on average, 3 or 4 other mouths, right? They're feeding their family. So, I had bought a lot of people. I'd got them for what are called 457 visas in Australia that had come in from Brazil, India. I had a lot of people which meant that I knew that them coming to Australia meant they were bringing their entire families with them, etc. And that was the brutalness that I realized in business, is that they don't care that you have, a good relationship with these people. For them, they have to report to the stock market. Then the other thing that I realized going through multiple acquisitions is that they go, oh, we acquired you all because the people are amazing. It is the biggest lie corporates tell you. They generally make an acquisition of a company that's not performing because of the tax write-offs they'll receive for the losses that company's made in the last 5 to 7 years. And so you think, oh, it's a great idea. They're acquiring this other company and we're all going to be now a big team. And then you wonder why 6 months later, they go and just cut ruthlessly through the business. Oh, we've got 2 of that person in a role, cut. And this goes on in corporations because you don't realize is that generally the acquisition is never for people. It is because of tax benefits. And it's, we were trading at an $800 million business at that time. And the tax, and we went from 800 million to around 200 million. And so the tax credits that they got with the government through those losses to the Japanese company was going to offset a lot of the revenue they were making in another part of their business. And so that's why they do these acquisitions. And of course, the C-level all get bonused for making the deal happen. They all walk away and walk into their next career and next role. And the casualties around the common day employee that are, on the tools, out consulting, doing their job, they just don't care. I don't know how they sleep at night, but that's the way it is in big corporate world.
I think you have to be a certain type of person, don't you? I can see Nathan smiling. We literally had this conversation my morning. Was it last night for you, Nathan?
Yeah, no, I had said to Sarah, if they just fronted up and said, look, we care about the share price and the bottom line, I would be totally okay with it. But we care about the people, and we all roll our eyes because they clearly don't. So
yeah. Any questions? Anyone got their hands up for it? You want to ask any questions or any in the Q&A?
I can make a statement here. When your manager asks for loyalty, what I always answer is you should get a dog in this case, not an employee. So
yeah.
Good point.
David with the mic drop moment there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, Charlie. Charlie, congratulations, by the way. I've not spoken to you since the wedding.
Thank you. Hey, Mark. I just got
Charlie.
questions in the Q&A. So I recently worked with Rory to rewrite the Power Up program, which is focused on career switchers. And one of the biggest feedback points we're getting at the moment is, okay, we've been through this program, great. We like the fact that we want to get into Power Platform. But after that, Microsoft don't do anything else for them. So I was wondering, would the 90-day mentoring challenge be suitable for them? Or is it only people who are already comfortable in Power Platform and looking to advance in their careers? Or would it be suitable for newbies?
Yeah, it's definitely suitable for newbies. And it's interesting, this time round, the youngest person I have on the 90-day mentoring challenge is 15 years old. She is doing the challenge. Obviously, she's not even out of school yet. And it was so funny for those of you that have been through the program, module 2 is on how to consult effectively. And she just shared her video last night in the WhatsApp channel and was like, I don't understand any, like so many of these concepts. Like, she has never been in the situation where she's got to tell the honest truth to the customer. She's never been, you know, I talk about the 3 fears of consulting, and she was like, but like, I feel like I'm ready for when I do that in the future. And like, she's on it because her dad did the 90-day mentoring challenge last quarter. He's coming through with her doing it this quarter. She wants to go into IT. But how cool is that? That yes, there's some things that it will more set that individual up for the future, their future. And it's interesting is that when I started my IT career, which was back when the World Wide Web became a big deal, and I got into web design was the reason for getting into IT. This is, a very long time ago. And we were training lots of people, and they were, one of our core business strategies around training were career switches. Like we were taking, plumbers or builders or things like that were very physical labor intensive job. And we were training them to be Microsoft certified system engineers. So the big pinnacle of certification in Microsoft 20 plus years ago was to become an MCSE or an MCSD on the developer side or the system engineering side. And we would take them through these boot camps of intense training, and then they would, come from totally unrelated, totally non-IT sectors, and they would just smash it in IT, right? They'd get the tools, they'd get up and running, and then they've had 20 plus 30-year careers now in this space. And that, there's even a bunch of MVPs now in our community that are, been hairdressers. That's where they came from. And now they're, full on power platform experts. There's been people that I'm thinking of Britta in the US. She was a receptionist and she notices stuff being done in her business. And this is back, she was pre-power platform. And she was like, can I have a go? And now she's a Dynamics, so she became a Dynamics 365 consultant. She's helping other people with career switching. And for me, I've always noticed that I was uneducated, right? And that I was told that I was dumb going through school. My dad, grew up on a dairy farm. And so my dad, he had left his school when he was 14 years old because he just wanted to go farming. And he bought his first farm when he was 21. And farming was all he wanted to do. So he never forced us to go down an education route, right? The concept of university, it was never even a consideration for me. It wasn't like, am I smart enough or not to go? I didn't want to go to university. The sooner I could get out of school and be free of it, the better. And that's why my first 3 years of my career, I was a groundskeeper, fixing lawnmowers and mowing lawns for a school. And I found that IT allowed me to get into technology and become a high income earner without having a formal education. And that's what it's always blown me away is that, and I remember talking, and I'm going to name drop Charles Lamana here and saying, I don't know if you realize just how many lives that this technology has impacted into, and that was when he was joining BizApps, that this technology has impacted because it allows people to get a career in the space that is really high paying. If you look at the average, money the average person in any country can make, I think in New Zealand, the average income, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, is around $70,000, and when I can make like 5 times that in this area without a university degree, but staying in the game long term, leveling up, every time I move and things like that, I just think, for career changes, they can really cut themselves out a career that's exciting, that's fun, that can really, to quote Dr. Zeus, take them anywhere they choose, right? And for me, it's taken me all over the world. And back to the challenge. I'm actually probably going to do a couple of modules which will not adjust the core of the 90-day mentoring challenge, because I think it's 12 modules at the moment, and people say it's like drinking from a fire hose doing it. But I'm going to create like some on-ramp modules, which are going to be tailored specifically for career changes, where the 90-day mentoring challenge doesn't go deeply into certifications because I'm like, everybody does certifications. There's heaps of content out there. I might be more deliberate around what I think is the right certification path. And I've already designed this out, but more than just Power Platform, and more than just Dynamics, because I don't think a really good rounded consultant anymore can not also know a great deal about some of the M365 area. They need to know a great deal around Fabric, and they need to know a great deal around Azure services as part of being a well-rounded consultant these days. And so where in my career, I grew up very niche down, depending on which part of the world you're from. I think you've got to be broad enough to know where the opportunities are going, but then deep enough on about 3 areas, I feel, to really develop a very strong career in the space. I used to say I was only one area you need to be deep, like the T consultant model, but I really feel it now needs to be what I call an M consultant or a W consultant. So it needs to have 3 good, strong pillars as well as being broad. You need to be strong in 3 areas. And these days, AI needs to be one of those areas without a doubt. So Charlie, did I answer that? And I'm actually, that program is run by Microsoft, right? It's funded by Microsoft?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's completely free.
Yeah. And so here's the other thing, right? I did the 90-day mentoring challenge free for five years. And I got a lot of feedback, which wasn't positive about me running it for free. Interesting, right? Is that people felt I devalued what it was. And then I started going, okay, so what do you charge and how do you make it? Because it was never designed to be like an income earner or anything for me in that respect, right? It was back in the day, it was giving back to the community that had been amazing for my entire career. And then what I found is that if you look at the psychology of it, if people don't have skin in the game and something like this, it's too easy for them to quit. And what I would find is a lot of people would join the 90-day mentoring challenge, but not a lot of people could finish the 90-day mentoring challenge. And the fundamental reason was, I'll do it next time. I'm busy now, right? Life would get in the way. What I've noticed is that the people engagement since I put a fee on the program has gone through the roof. Because people commit themselves. They're like, hey, I put money in this. I'm not going to lose it. And then, so I started reading some books on the whole psychology of this. And it's a real thing. The more you pay for something, the more you commit to something. If it's free, it doesn't matter that, like, for every hour that I do on the 90-day mentoring challenge, when I was working my flat in London, I use a tool called Toggle to measure my time just to know what I'm doing. It took me 12 hours for every 1 hour of output. And so, and I don't think people see, like, when you go and, speak at a user group and you do a 20-minute or a half-hour presentation, I don't think people see necessarily how much work you do behind something like that to get to that point. And there's a lot of things that we set expectation in the community that everything should be free and easy, and because, it's community. But there's an element that people also need to understand. People have done a heck of a lot of work to get to create content for the community. And I tell you, I don't do any of this for the MVP program, right? How I get my MVP is my podcasting, right? 2 shows a week. That's 2 contributions a week, 52 days a year, because I never miss a week. I'm covered for contributions, right? I never need anything else. And also I interface a lot with the product team on a one-on-one basis. So I don't have any problem in meeting those requirements. For me, I just see, it's how many people can have an amazing career. And if I can help them with the 90-day mentoring challenge, I always believe that people get more value than what they pay for. And I hope that's going to continue in the future. John, you had a question?
Yeah, so I'm on the 90-day mentoring challenge right now. And Mark, you've actually, with this session, you interrupted me doing the latest module. So luckily it's on demand, so good news. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, it's a game changer, really, to be honest. And I think the bit that you really kind of hit the nail on the head is is that, you know, you're doing this outside of a company's perspective, and you know, there's not many people that I know in this space that are doing anything near anything similar. I don't think so. And it's the kind of honesty from it, and you know, it's very engaging. So yeah, to Charlie's point, I mean, I would recommend anyone going on this. And if I was 15 and this was going on it, then I would be saving up my pocket money to come on it, because that lady she's gonna be set up. As soon as she hits 18, she'll be able to get into a consultant role for sure, and she'll be like, you know, 20 years, 30 years ahead of me. So
yeah,
good luck.
Yeah. It's interesting. So one of the things I encourage everybody is to find their voice and become good at public speaking, even though you might never intend to actually speak publicly. It'll help you in so many other areas of your career. And so, you know, when I went to London, I'd already done Toastmasters. When I went to London, I joined the Toastmasters at the London School of Law. And I did that within 24 hours of my plane arriving in London when I moved there. And I did it while I was in the UK. And I'm a big proponent of it, right? As in, because I've noticed how it absolutely transforms people's lives when they get the confidence to find their voice. But it was crazy. She, you know, at 15 years old, I didn't realize she's not legally allowed to go to a Toastmasters because she's not 18. But they have this other thing called like the junior gavel or something, which is designed for student ages, which it's if you like age appropriate version of Toastmasters for people under the age of 18. I didn't even know that existed. So yeah, people can get started young.
I think that's great as well, because university's got a minimum of 3 years, and I don't know how up to date the universities are on these technologies, and with AI and the pace that everything's moving, I actually think that these sort of training opportunities are probably better long term for somebody than going to university, really.
Yeah, universities are notoriously behind, and they're notorious for not being, you know, the practicalities out of it. That's the bit that I found when I was at university. I found university quite difficult. Yeah, and I found a lot of benefits from this kind of learning. Even these sessions as well, Sarah. You know, depending on, well, you know, anyone that comes on these and presents on here, I think, you know, people learn a lot from that as well. And I can't really see how a university could capture that, especially with how fast paced this space moves. I don't think it's possible.
I think
unless Mark,
I think you're right.
Mark do a franchise with universities.
Yeah. But it's that commercial aspect as well, though, isn't it, John? So, you know, you've got the consultant experience, Mark, you've got the understanding of how that commercial worlds and how a consultant, the skills that a consultant needs, and you might not really get that practical. You might get the theoretical advice in uni, but not really.
It's real world experience that you need. You know, certainly that's what working on a project for a customer is going to give you more than you can ever read from a textbook or, you know, an online course.
Yeah, I agree. Nathan, we've dropped our hands. You've been very polite.
Mark, what can those of us who have been through the program and benefited from it, what can we do to support this work?
So the alum, you know, which is something I only just started this year, is developing that alum community, and already it's split into multiple subgroups as people want to do, you know, stuff around content creation. What was the other one? There's a tech track, I think, of the couple that have split off. I'm trying to work out how do I buddy up new people going through the program with the alum, right, to give them a kind of and so I really want to develop out that whole alumni area to really allow people to, you know, continue on. Like I think at my last count, there was about 42 people that have become MVPs that have gone through the 90, and sorry, these are BizApps MVPs that have gone through the 90-day mentoring challenge, and their careers have gone, you know, to vastly different places than when they did the 90-day mentoring challenge. Like I remember one guy on the first 90-day mentoring challenge was from Fender Guitars in the US. He was the Dynamics CRM admin at Fender Guitars, and he didn't know, you know, the reason for joining the 90-day mentoring challenge, and I don't even know how he found it, you know, I think it was off LinkedIn, is that he enjoyed being an admin, and he thought that was the only career you could do in Dynamics, and he really loved the technology. And so, you know, when I went through and said, hey, you know, all the places you can go, and I break down every different type of career path that's possible, he left Fender within 9 months. He became a consultant within about 18 months. He works for Hitachi Solutions in the US now on multiple large projects. And, you know, his wife then went through the 90-day mentoring challenge the following year. It's just, it took off. People don't know what they don't know. And it's people like that, I think, that, you know, how do we get them once they've become superstars? Like so many of those 42 now are kind of like massive leaders in the BizApps community. And I think that their voice would be unique back into that alumni community to really help that. So I think that's going to be a big piece. And then it's really just getting the word out there, right? I'm only my main target audience is on LinkedIn, because I think I've got about 27,000 followers on LinkedIn. So that's where I get my biggest engagement from. But yeah, it's just the word of mouth of sharing it. Everybody's story is personal and unique to them. And people are going to be more encouraged to go on it if it's from somebody they know. So yeah, that would be the biggest thing, I suppose.
Yeah, sign me up, man. I'll do whatever I can to support it. It's been
Thanks,
a huge impact in my life.
Thank you.
Franco, are you waiting?
Yeah, cheers everyone. Great session. Really resonated with me. And to echo some of what Mark was saying there, big trend I've seen over the last few years in particular, lots of people reaching out to me for advice on how they can get a side gig going in Power Platform. So they're already working for a big consultancy, but they're just taking such a hit on cost of living, or there's been a big hit to their job security. I'm saying that I'm seeing the big redundancies in what we're seeing as very safe roles. So yeah, kind of looking for career insurance. So I think a lot of what you did delivering on the 90-day mentoring challenge really fits that so well. So really, whatever industry, if you were to even switch from this to another, that I think work's going to be much more performance related in how we're paid, more casual, fractional. So that content marketing, networking, consultancy, understanding how a business ticks, being able to sell the value of yourself, and that continuous learning is going to be valuable to everyone. Yeah,
I like that career insurance. I'm going to use that. It's very cool. I'm seeing a big trend in the space as well, as and Frank and I, and Will was at Vancouver, had a big chat around this last month, is that I'm seeing more and more consultants that have, you know, good at what they do are now specializing and having a side hustle. And I didn't use that label, but when I look back at my last 3 years, I've been side hustling the entire time I've been a full-time employee. And when I looked at my accounting recently, I've made more money doing side hustles than my full-time FTE position at IBM.
Yeah,
so
it's very telling, isn't it? And I think it can often be a lot more energizing as well, isn't it? Because you're not spending that time doing admin work, bureaucracy, the stuff that saps your energy.
Yeah.
A lot of the partners seem to be sucking the life out of people at the moment, really getting their money's worth with their permanent staff. It's a really common conversation that I've been having with people recently. Just too many projects, and the better, the more versatile you are, the more you're thrown at, you know, and that's the reason that people are talking to me, you know, they've kind of got fed up of it. But to be honest, I think they're all at it from what I can see right now.
Also, there's a lot, you know, for those that are afraid to put themselves out there. I think there's, and Sarah, I think you picked up on a post that I did around this, and it's something I want to drill into a lot more in the coming months, is that when I was at high school, and I remember going to art class back then, if you were going to, in art, if you were going to make a submission for your exam, you had to have a portfolio of artwork that you did that year. You had to do, you know, your drawings in coal. You had to do your paintings and watercolors and oils and your sculptures, and it was always part of your portfolio. And what I have noticed in the industry is that consultants are not good at putting a portfolio of work together when they go for job interviews. And I've interviewed hundreds of people for roles, and so I see kind of the massive disparity, and thinking that certifications on your CV are going to be enough. And if you've seen some of the stuff I've posted on the difference between certification and or experience. But what I'm finding is that not many people, when going for roles, know how to present a portfolio of work. And I think it's super important these days. And it's so easy to do these days, right? Because you can just point them to you could easily point them to a site that has that content there, or bring it up in a presentation, because so many interviews are still done remote like this. So it's easier for you to share your screen and say, let me show you, rather than let me tell you. And I am, you know, if you're a guru of something like Power FX, like Nathan is, if he went for any role that was going to be heavily Power FX based, he can refer to his body of work that he has done, right? And this project and that project. And a common thing I see from people going for roles is that, oh, I can't share about that project because it's under NDA. Well, get a portfolio together of non-NDA content or sanitized content so you can share. The minute somebody says, I can't share something because it's under NDA, you're literally, like, unless you've been a rock star in the rest of the interview, this is our last interview that you're having. Because I have seen too many people then ride the shirt tails of somebody else in a team. I've employed a guy when I had my own company in New Zealand. A individual had come from another country. It was in New Zealand. I employed him because he had worked for U-Haul project. I can remember it in the US. And, you know, had this glowing CV. When we, you know, 1 week in, we realized he didn't have any of the skills. He had been involved in the U-Haul project, but he wasn't strategically involved that his CV showed. Everybody else in his team had been more the strategy. And his CV was, you know, it name dropped these big names and these big projects, but his role in them weren't demonstratable. And that's made me very cautious about people that will name drop big projects, but then can never talk about them. And the fundamental reason is they don't know about them.
Involved in is a commonly used term. But it's interesting. I had the opposite situation. I spoke to a candidate. I almost didn't phone him because the CV was awful. But I thought, no, phone him. And he was amazing. And I had to phone up my client and go, listen, do you trust me? Just give me half an hour. Speak to this guy. I've got to speak to him.
Yeah.
And he whipped up this screen share, and they were like, oh my God, Sarah, you're right. He's brilliant. And probably one of my favourite placements, really, because he was brilliant. I made him do his CV like 3 times. I was like, no, do it again, do it again. And it still wasn't. He was laughing. He didn't care, but he's absolutely awesome. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. Parvez, hey?
Hey, sorry, I just wanted to come in quickly, having just come off the Q1 cohort. Just to add, for me, the real value in the 90-day mentoring challenge was the fact that it brings together the perfect mix and the perfect balance between the tech and then also the non-tech general kind of consultancy skills and the softer skills as part of the job, and then also the career advice that goes with it. So those 3 kind of key elements coming together, I think, is the real value on this course. And that's all I'm going to say, really. I just don't want to spoil it for everyone.
Nice. Thanks, Prez. Awesome. Sarah.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you because I've just taken so many things from this call tonight. I was previously a teacher, so I've retrained and been in the Power Platform area now for a couple of years, and just been given lots of different advice around whether to specialise in one area or try and broaden my knowledge. So just found this really useful tonight, and I'll definitely be looking into the mentoring programme. I think it's like the nudge that I need to go on to the next sort of stage.
That's awesome. Really good. Really good. Thank you. John.
I've got a question actually just for Sarah, because my wife is an ex-teacher and she has struggled kind of moving away from that. And like I talk to her about what I do, but she doesn't really understand it. Maybe it's the way that I'm trying to explain it, but I think there's a lot of transferable skills from teaching that can come into consultancy. So what can I go downstairs and tell my wife and say, right, okay, this is what you need to do. Apart from the 90-day mentoring challenge, I mean, that's a given, Mark, don't worry about that. What could I do to help convince her that that's a move that she could make possibly?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I speak to a lot of teachers that are desperate to leave teaching and have got good IT skills, but just don't want to make that jump. For me, like, I'm still a qualified teacher and I could go and do supply next week. So I saw it as not so much of a risk. I've always got that sort of backup career of going back into teaching if it didn't work. And my main reason for sort of making that jump was COVID. So I was shielding due to a health condition and couldn't go back into school. And I didn't want to work remotely. So I sort of, I was really, really lucky to get a job at a local company, Vantage 365, which took me on and sort of trained me up. So it was a little bit kind of lucky for me that I knew somebody that would take me on. But I did a lot of the Microsoft Learn content and got a couple of the 900 exams to kind of give myself a feeling as to whether I would enjoy that type of work. I've always been into IT in schools as well. So I think if you've got an interest in IT, definitely the soft skills, I get sort of a lot of feedback around as a consultant and talking to customers. I think that's really similar of like talking to parents at schools. So I think there's definitely a lot of skills that you can transfer. And as long as you've got an interest in IT, there's so much content out there on the Microsoft Learn program and the Power Up program to get started in there, really. But it is really difficult to make that jump, I think, and come out. But you're always a teacher, so she can always go back to teaching if she didn't like it. It's just worth giving something a try, I think.
I don't think she'd ever go back to teaching. That kind of ended in quite a bad mental health episode. So
I think it's very, very different. When you were talking earlier around sort of loyalty and working in a company, I think that's really different to teaching. If you're in a school, you feel very much, I think you feel very, very loyal to that school, and you would only leave if you had got a better opportunity. Or I think working in IT, I found it very different, that you are more of a sort of number in a company that's allocated a certain amount of work. But at the same time, it's different sort of working conditions, working hours. Yeah, but it's very, very different. I mean, I love the job that I'm working in at the moment. I did love teaching as well. So I think that's the difference. I wasn't really looking to leave it. I've sort of like left because of COVID. But at the same time, I'm at a point now where I do want to progress in this career. But it's just knowing what the next steps are. I kind of get told a lot that I need a bit more experience, and it's just knowing what experience I need. So that's the difficulty I've got at the moment is I get a lot of sort of praise about the soft skills and a lot of praise around sort of tech, but I just want to know what I need to do next. But I mean, I'm happy if you want to give them my details and we have a chat. I've spoken to a few different teachers that are.
Oh, that's
mentoring challenge.
That'd be great. Yeah,
it's good.
I'm conscious of time because we're making you late for your next meeting.
Yeah,
Mark.
they're in my lobby. I can see them waiting.
He'll forgive us.
Yes, Keith.
Yeah, he's a regular here. I mean, yeah, so let's wrap that up because Mark's got another meeting to go to, but that was really enjoyable, flew by. Thanks for all the input from everybody around the room today. If anyone does want to follow up with any conversations, then I'm sure you can reach out to Mark or myself direct.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
See you soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.